Full Melt Show is intended for a mature audience. It contains adult themes, adult content, and sometimes adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
It's the Full Melt Show.
Army, party with your mouth with Wiener Schnitzel pastrami 3 different ways. On fries, on a dog, or a sandwich. Only at Wiener Schnitzel.
Oops, there we go.
E-cigs are more popular than ever, especially among high school students, but teens are doing more than just vaping nicotine. As health specialist Denise Dodor reports, children are using these devices to vape marijuana.
I probably started smoking weed when I was like 14.
Kids getting high on marijuana right under your nose, and parents don't even know it.
We can't tell what they're inhaling because of the odor. It's not a traditional odor.
That's because the flavored liquids come in varieties ranging from cotton candy to apple pie, and the smell of marijuana goes undetected. The L.A. County Sheriff's Department says they're confiscating more and more of these devices from students. This YouTube video even shows some brazen enough to vape pot in class. Some now using e-liquids that contain highly concentrated marijuana compounds.
The battery heats it up and causes it to activate the THC, and you ingest it, and nobody knows you're getting high because it doesn't really smell. Yeah.
Graham, as he prefers to be called, is talking about the active compound in marijuana responsible for the high. THC-infused liquids, he says, can hit the user pretty hard.
You go 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way to 100%.
The concentration level of THC is much higher, therefore making it more dangerous.
Studies show it can be up to 30 times more concentrated. Deputy Cesar Romero with the L.A. County Sheriff's Department STAR program says kids vape pot before and after school, but are more likely to do it at home when parents aren't there.
A Yale survey of nearly 4,000 high school students reveals 30% have admitted to trying marijuana. Of those teens, many say they've tried hash oil in an e-cig or THC wax in a vaporizer pen.
Some of these things could be really altering someone's existence for the rest of their life.
Pediatrician Dr. John Mangoni says heavy marijuana use can also affect the developing young brain, leading to memory loss and other abnormalities.
That'll affect some of their reasoning.
The owner of this Ontario vaping store says they don't sell marijuana liquid or e-cigs to minors. But he adds one thing parents can do is learn the difference.
We will educate parents because that is not something we condone.
It's like you have to be a detective. You really do, and you have to be on top of it. And I feel like I never can let my guard down.
Mother of two, Nina DeLucia, says vaping opens a whole new universe of worry for her as a parent.
Don't ignore the problem because the problem is there and it's only getting worse. So we need to be proactive as parents.
Graham says he vapes marijuana regularly and regrets getting hooked.
I do think it's a good idea to wait until your brain is pretty developed before you start experimenting with substances. Sometimes I wish I did.
In Pasadena, Denise Dodor, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Are you high? What are you talking about?
This is the Full Melt.
The Full Melt Show. A marijuana discussion about news, culture, politics, and lifestyle. FullMelt.com. Toll free. 844-420-TALK. 844-420-TALK.
How quick Monday rolls back around. And how quick the news shotgun is reloaded. Both barrels, bang, bang. You got Nancy Reagan died over the weekend. Just say no. I gotta say yes. I just gotta say yes. I don't know. She's going to be buried next to her husband out there at the Ronald Reagan Memorial Library in, Pasadena? And so she's going to lie in repose there for a while. The Just Say No Queen. Hanging out in repose so you may pay her your last respects. I don't know. I never really respected Nancy Reagan. Never. I really didn't. Nancy was, look, Nancy's like Ronnie. These guys were both actors. And if you look back at their political history, and this always gets me so, especially in today's day and age, if you're a Republican, and then for whatever reason you end up switching to the other party, going to be a Democrat, I don't trust you already. If you're a Democrat and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you switch and you become a Republican, I can't trust you. I mean, what are you doing? A tiger doesn't change his stripes. And although the reason to me it seems that you'd be switching from one party to another is more because you can't get elected by the party that you were already in. I mean, this is why the threat was made by Trump early on and left open. He's since said he will back whoever becomes the nominee. I imagine the only reason he was willing to say that is because he believes he's the presumptive nominee. If you've got this election polarized by extreme right and what some people would call extreme left, and then one candidate jumps ship to another side or somewhere in the middle. I'm an independent. I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. Well, wait a minute. You were just over there staunchly on your platform yelling about all these things, and now all of a sudden some magical fairy came by, waved a magic wand, and now you're over here in this other place. It seems really like you were more interested in being able to continue to pay your mortgage via the income you had in public office than you were interested in taking care of whatever it is that you were claiming was your platform. I mean, for crying out loud, these are diametrically opposed positions. And this is what's so crazy about this country. You get one guy in, he leans the whole country this way, the pendulum's back over here. And then you get another guy in, 4-8 years later, oh, we're back over here now. Some people would say that is great in this country, that the pendulum always swings. It doesn't always swing. It's forced to swing. And it's usually when people, it's easier to swing that pendulum when people are just plain old pissed off with their government, which never seems to go away. And it's the Nancy Reagans of the world that really nailed that down. I mean, before Nancy Reagan, people really didn't pay much attention to the First Lady. It was just eye candy for the president. She hung on the president's arm at official events. And Nancy Reagan was the first one that actually, took charge of something, some initiative. Just Say No was her first, biggest initiative. She had some others along the way. But you have to remember that as a takeover of the Republican Party first, the Reagans were, again, originally Democrats. Them and their Just Say No crap, their trickle-down crap. And they were part of the social elite. They were the beginning of the wholesale for sale sign being put on the Republican Party. Hey, we're up for the highest bid. We don't care if you used to be a Democrat. We'll teach you how to be a Republican. You're actors, aren't you? I mean, and they acted right up till the very end. Ronnie Reagan couldn't even form sentences at the end of his presidency. He had to get them, piped in through the background by Nancy Reagan. I mean, she was practically had Ronnie on her lap as a puppet. So, farewell, Miss Reagan. We honor ye as a vice president's wife, but I cannot honor you in the position of your Just Say No mentality, because we know it was all a farce and a lie, and fed to this country as if it were staple food. And it was. This is your brain on drugs, the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, and their political input into more modernization of the prohibitionist mentality, the one that says we want to treat substance as if it's crime. The one that says instead of treating drug use as a whole of any kind as a social health crisis or a social health issue, depending on the circumstance, and not a criminal justice one, is indeed the way to go. So I'm hoping we can bid farewell to an era of just say no. Because just say no turned into mandatory minimums. It turned into the wholesaling of our criminal justice system, both on the federal and on the state level, to private institution. And anytime you privatize something, people want to say, oh, private industry can do it better than government. Government they're not good stewards of our tax dollars. They see this income as just a gimme. It's just there. That's the Republican position. There's no appreciation for the value of these dollars. And because they're not earned, because they're not appreciated, they're just doled out as if it was candy. So let's privatize these prisons. But you don't remember. There's a couple of major important points there that this just say no mentality led to when you're talking about mandatory minimums and private prisons. It usurps the responsibility of the trier of fact and the sentencer in any given criminal act. It usurps that responsibility of their judgment. Why else would you have a quote-unquote judge? They're elected generally by the people. And if there's a judge in place elected by people, this is an elected position for a reason. It cannot be appointed, these judges. Now, there are some judges that are appointed only in certain special circumstances, and the Supreme Court would be the exception. All those judges are appointed. None of those guys are elected. But they're appointed by presidents and then advised and consented by Congress via the U.S. Senate. So when you take the responsibility of a judge away with mandatory minimums, and then you privatize industry, and I haven't dropped the other shoe on private industry yet with controlling prisons, number one, it's the government's responsibility. And I believe it's an indelible responsibility when you want to take away the rights of a citizen to have control over that individual. You can't just sign them away as if they were property. And that's exactly what these quote-unquote criminals, these quote-unquote nonviolent criminals, are being treated as property. Oh, you're here to be punished. You can't punish people as adults for crimes associated with medical condition because many of these people are drug addicts of one form or another. Drug addiction is a health issue. It is not something you can criminalize. You don't take somebody who's mentally ill and say, oh, you're a criminal. Maybe some of the things that the mentally ill might do could be criminal, but they're not criminals until they actually do them. And so you can't take the responsibility of government and throw it out. Like I want to throw out the whole just say no generation because it was a farce perpetrated on our very nation.
You're getting the full melt.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RudoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
RootMetrics, in the nation's largest independent study, tested wireless performance across the country. Verizon won big with 153 state wins. AT&T got 38, Sprint got 2, and T-Mobile got 0. Verizon also won first in the U.S. for data, call, speed, and reliability. AT&T got text. Stuck on an average network? Join Verizon, and we'll cover your cost to switch.
It's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571.
What's up with these things, Victor?
We decided to give ourselves stickers for each feature we release. We read about 10,000 suggestions a week to create features that, as traders, we'd want to use.
10,000 suggestions? Who reads all of those?
He does.
For all the confidence you need, TD Ameritrade. You got this.
Introducing Sacred Elements, a place for natural and alternative healing for the mind, body, and soul. Sacred Elements. It's one place, all solutions.
Registered, licensed, certified, ordained.
Sacred Elements.
Massage, hypnosis, Reiki.
Sacred Elements.
Raindrop, aroma and color therapy, body detox, ministry, life coaching, weight and nutrition counseling.
Sacred Elements. Next to the Sweet Leaf, 400 South Dort Highway, Flint.
11 to 7 daily, closed Sunday.
Call 810-259-2570. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. The phone lines here on the program are brought to you by No Smell Bags at nosmell.com. Catalog bags, you can go to No Smell. You see, now I'm I got to tell you about the catalog bags. You know, when you're traveling with cannabis, if you're in your car, if you're going from one place to another, doesn't really matter where or how, the largest chance of you getting in trouble over cannabis is going to be because somebody smelled it. The cops never say, "Oh, I saw the cannabis." It's always, "Hey, I smelled the cannabis. I smelled the marijuana somewhere." And so I suppose one of the easiest ways to avoid that detection and avoid, therefore, the problem that could potentially result from that detection is to use the no-smell bags. It's a patented technology. It's the same stuff that they use inside of chemical warfare suit. It's an impenetrable barrier that has on the inside a carbon-impregnated, an activated carbon-impregnated filter. It's a weave in there. And so you can check out all these great products with the no-smell bags at nosmell.com. The phone lines here are sponsored indeed by No Smell and the Canalock bags. 844-420-TALK if you want to chime in about something on today's program, or if you have anything to do on the subject of cannabis, hemp, and marijuana or medical marijuana. Have you seen what's in the news today? It's it's crazy stuff. When I said it at the top of the show, both barrels loaded. The news gun is loaded with both barrels. And it covers everything from, foreign lands. You got some of the most conservative nations, like Malaysia, is very opposed to any kind of. In Malaysia, you got a couple of drugs and they'll just execute you in public. I mean, they don't screw around over there. And so they're taking a position on this marijuana thing. In light of the idea that their closest relative, neighbor, I would say, is Australia. And they've recently decided on a national basis to start including marijuana in their medical lexicon. They're going to start growing medical marijuana in Australia. Fascinating stuff. Absolutely glorious that Australia has woken up to this and embraced it. But you got the Malaysians next door, and what do they got to say about this? Because up until now, it's not been very friendly. So you got that kind of thing going on. The other barrel's loaded with other stuff, like the crazy, Florida legislators. And so we'll talk about what's going on in both of those places. But first, I wanted to talk about these two marijuana bills signed by Governor Kate Brown in Oregon. This is according to OregonLive.com. Kate Brown has signed 2 bills that make key changes to Oregon's recreational marijuana program, including one that removes a 2-year residency requirement for marijuana licensees and another that aims to draw small medical growers into the regulated system. Brown signed Senate Bill 1598 and House Bill 4014. Senate Bill 1511, which allows dispensaries to sell marijuana-infused edibles and concentrates earlier than planned, and House Bill 4094, which allows banks and credit unions to deal with legal pot businesses without facing criminal liability, are awaiting her signature. So they've also been passed, but she hasn't signed them yet. I would imagine she may be consulting with legal counsel before she does. Brown signed these bills, and a quick look at the 2 bills signed by the governor. Senate Bill 1598 makes it easier for some medical marijuana growers to enter the regulated recreational market by removing a paperwork requirement when applying for state-regulated recreational marijuana licenses. The provision is intended to help bring smaller growers into the regulated recreational market system through a so-called micro-canopy license, which could come with lower fees and fewer requirements. Senate Bill 1598 also adds medical and research marijuana grows as recognized farm crops, making them easier to locate in exclusive farm areas and protecting them from lawsuits filed by neighbors over perceived nuisances like odor and noise. Recreational marijuana grow sites are already recognized as farm crops under state law. The bill also clarifies that home medical marijuana grows aren't subject to inspection by the Oregon Health Authority, creates a subcategory of dispensaries for nonprofits that may accept excess marijuana from growers and sell to patients for little or no cost, and requires the Health Authority to study medical marijuana access in areas underserved by dispensaries and retailers once the state's regulated marijuana industry is off the ground. House Bill 4014 removes the 2-year residency requirement for recreational marijuana producers, processors, and retailers. The law also reducing annual medical marijuana card registration fees for veterans from $200 to $20, so a reduction of 90% in cost to vets. Treats medical marijuana the same as prescription drugs when settling conditions for people on pretrial release. Diversion unrelated to impaired driving, probation, or post-supervision, and allows all marijuana establishments to deduct business expenses allowable under the federal tax code when filing state tax returns. Fascinating stuff. I mean, this is the kind of thing I would absolutely welcome our own legislators here in the state of Michigan to do. Unfortunately, the governor is busy unplugging the toilet, so to speak, that he plugged up in Flint. And he's still building that stupid bridge over there to Canada, while Matty Maroon is yet trying to build yet another bridge. There are 2 bridges that exist, one in Port Huron in the Detroit area, and one, it's still that general area. It's still, I guess, southeast Michigan. You've got one in Port Huron, and then you got one, the Blue Water Bridge, and a tunnel, mind you, that go into Canada directly from Detroit. And then you got this other bridge being built by the governor, which he's got Canada paying for, and then we got to pay all the tolls and fees for later. And then Matty Maroon wanting to build another one to Canada, right next to the existing Blue Water Bridge. So, I don't know where the governor's... I mean, he wants to stake legacy on that crazy bridge. I don't think anybody's going to remember the bridge, Mr. Governor. I think they're going to remember the toilet that you plugged up in Flint. I think they're going to remember all of your, no, that's not on my radar. We're not going to do that yet. We're going to take away the rights of people in unions with the right to work farce. What a joke. Why don't you call it what it is? The right to break unions bill. More Reagan ideas. The hell are you doing? See, I get up on this soapbox, and I'm sorry, much of this program is indeed a soapbox. I just, sometimes you'd want to use the soap to wash out the mouth of the Republican nominee potential and Donald Trump. I mean, have you seen the ads that they're running now with him running off at the mouth? Like they play any sentence that he got a cuss word in, they put it in a commercial. And this is why people have been saying all along that Mr. Trump's not electable. Because they're going to run ads like this. Who elects a filthy-mouthed president? I mean, you can't have the president just looking up at the president of China and going, you know what, F you guys. That doesn't work so well. You must have some modicum of respect for the people you're conducting diplomacy with, even if they're your arch rival enemies. If you can't button this together and act adult about things without becoming profane or falling into the gutter, I mean, what kind of spokesperson are you? And you're not even a spokesperson in this instance. You're the official representative of all policy in the United States. For crying out loud. Bloomberg announced that he's not running for president, by the way. Did you see that? And I was making the statement on Facebook that I'll bet you that would change if it ever came to light that there was a clear path for Senator Sanders take the nominee position from Clinton. If Sanders became the presumptive nominee or became the nominee for the Democratic Party, I think you might see him renege on the idea that he's not going to get into the election if it's going to be somebody like Trump versus somebody like Sanders. I think he would. I absolutely think he would. Good grief. The show today is a build about a different subject. And we'll move into that a little bit later on in the program. The different subject is the idea that people are looking at marijuana now as a commodity, which it's always been. And some people who are tech savvy and also investor savvy have looked at creating a marijuana exchange. And we'll talk about what that is and how it works and where it's at and who's on it a little bit later on in the program. I got to tell you about Florida really quick because moving on to Florida, it's never been goofier in Florida than now, I think. You've got just, from the standpoint of history's sake, if you look at Florida, you'll see that a number of attempts have been made to decriminalize cannabis, and it's been very successful, at least in reducing it from an arrestable offense. Local governments have now seen that this is more cost heavy. You've got a roach there. I'm going to have to place you under arrest. Come here, put your hands behind your back. That's what they'll do that even for paraphernalia. If you got some rolling papers, you might get arrested for paraphernalia in Florida, and it is a misdemeanor. So I don't know how they could get away with that. How can they call it paraphernalia? How can they sell it? I don't know. It's very, very battling question there. So you've got this standpoint working within Florida. You've got some people taking notice that marijuana should be less criminal. We shouldn't be so focused directly on it. They still don't want to turn loose of the idea that they should take action on it, that they're going to issue a citation and there's still going to be a court appointment. They're just not utilizing the resources to transport you to jail, put you through the system that makes you post bond or bail, and then disposes of the case going forward from there. Because you can stay in jail that way until your case gets heard, or you can end up bonding or bailing out, and which generally most people have an opportunity to do. But you can guarantee that the court's getting some assurance that if you're found guilty, they're going to get their tax money, because let's face it, that's exactly what it is. They're going to call it fines and fees. You can label it what you want, but anytime you're writing a check to anybody in the government, it is a tax. It isn't a punishment. It's a fine or a fee. They're exacting a tax out of you. Let's just call it what it is. The governor here in Michigan, while he's busy trying to unplug that toilet in Flint, especially given the highlight put on it by the Sanders-Clinton debate broadcast live on CNN yesterday. The governor here in Michigan is just mired in poo-poo. I don't see how he can survive any of this, politically or otherwise. And yet they're still pursuing these crazy ideals. But in Florida, you go with these people who are in the legislature advocating only, and they've done this for a couple of years now. They passed this law 2 years ago, allowing for low THC marijuana oil or extract. They've created some law about this. But 2 years later, none of it's available. The kids having seizures, if they haven't died already, have either moved out of the state or found some other solution. Many of them medical refugees in Colorado, where they can get the cannabis oil and not worry about the growers and the politicians and the tax collectors and the regulators arguing about things over a bar table somewhere, because that's what they're doing right now. You still can't get cannabis oil that's been made in Florida. You got to break state law. You got to break federal law. They got to move this cannabis oil in from. I think the Stanley brothers have a big influence on that marketplace, and I think one of them is actually on the board. So you got these guys in Florida with this low THC marijuana bill that isn't even functional, even though they passed the law 2 years ago. Now coming together as a legislature, at least in the Senate, trying to make a final vote today on medical marijuana in whole. If the bill goes through, it'll make full-strength medical marijuana legal for terminally ill people. See, it's just the terminally ill that you can't get anybody else high, for crying out loud. The terminally ill, they're on their way out the door anyways, so let them have some solace. Why aren't you taking advantage of this before you're terminally ill? Why do you got to be terminally ill in order to start fixing the problem? In many cases, all they need is some cannabis. Nearly 2 years after passing a law and to allow limited types of medical pot like non-euphoric cannabis, the House approved a more far-reaching plan on Thursday. The new plan would revamp the 2014 law and would be more involved. Alternates doing the work of what we've done that work. They've proven the work in 20-something states across the U.S. We here in Florida, the man says, his name is Senator Jeff Clements from Palm Beach County, explaining on the bill, the best of the House decided to do something different, and more power to them.
You're getting the full melt.
I've seen things no man should bear, and those that every man should dare. From the beaches of Normandy to the far reaches of the earth. In my life, I have lived millions of lives. I've outrun robots and danced with dinosaurs. I've faced the faces of fear and fortitude and witnessed great beauty in the making. I've kept the company of kings and queens, but I'm no royalty or saint. I've traveled, trekked, wandered, and roamed, only to find myself right where I belong.
Jeep. See your authorized Jeep retailer for details on how you can become a Jeep owner.
We asked people to tell us something that happened in their past and something that might happen in their future. The good things were put on yellow magnets and the bad ones on blue. The results show the past was a pretty even mix of good and bad, yet the future was almost all good things. Now that you've seen the results of this experiment, what does it mean to you?
We all want to think about positive stuff.
Realistically, there will be downtimes.
It's great to think optimistically, but let's plan for whatever the future might bring.
Prudential, bring your challenges.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
It's the Full Melt Radio Show. Oh, it's so tasty. I was sucking on one of these Reese's Easter eggs. Sometimes you need a little infusion of sugar, you know? A little something. I don't do medibles. I don't. I suppose I probably should. I should do the oral cannabis. I know it has so many benefits. I just, I've always been in the camp that, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it myself. And I don't know. I was formally trained in food production. So I've been trained as a chef. I never leaned into that profession because I couldn't do it. There is way too much responsibility on a chef, an executive chef. Like restaurants make if you're doing everything right at a restaurant, you've got a profit margin of about 5%. And it can all be lost in an inefficiently run kitchen or in a kitchen where food's coming back, there's a lot of waste. We're not getting paid for the food, especially at a higher price place, because each time that happens, a bigger portion is coming back in the form of wasted food. I just couldn't do it. But I'd love to cook for small groups. I'd love to show off that flair, because food is really, it's a science by itself. You either know how food goes together or you don't. You either know how to present food or you don't. You either know how to cook food in general or you don't. Proper food handling, it's all there. And I consider myself a good chef. I'm a great cook. But I suppose it would take the infusion, if you'll pardon the pun, of my knowledge of extracts and growing. I have to marry that with my knowledge of food, because frankly, I'm not a big fan of the taste of these extracts if you can detect them. So a lot of people measure how good the quality of an infused product for oral consumption by how strong it tastes. And I can give you examples of everything from hard candy to gummies to desserts. And if you can taste the cannabis in there, it's a detractant from the enjoyment of the food. Now, some people would say it's much, and I guess it would be a valid argument, and I would agree with it, that if you can taste it in there, it's better. If you don't like the taste, it's better than having it mixed with something you do like than just all by itself. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But I just don't like the taste. So it's kind of inhibited me from delving into that place. Now, here's the other thing about that. I don't like to be incapacitated. I don't like to be out of control of my faculties because of substance of any kind. I don't. And so medibles tend to put me in a place, or have the potential to put me in a place that I wouldn't want to be. And I know how to get out of that. And I know, what I'm dealing with. I'm not going to be frightened by it. I just don't like to be placed there because I like to have full control. Like, if I want to choose to drive somewhere, I want to be able to drive. I don't want to be under the influence of something where I would go, no, I can't drive right now. I don't. So I don't go there generally. If I'm incapacitated like that, it happened generally by mistake. And then I just don't want to drive. I'm not going to drive right now. I don't think I've got the capacity to do that. I'm generally never in that state. And this is one of the reasons that I'm not, is because I don't do the medibles. And maybe if I did do the medibles, I'd grow a bit of a tolerance to them. But see, I don't want to do the medibles because then I'm connecting food with medicine, which is fine if you have to do that. But, you know, I'm getting older. I like to, you know, maintain a healthy diet. And if I've got all this incentive to eat these tasty treats, boy, those pounds when they go on are a lot harder to take off when you get a little bit older. And I can notice some places on my body where I'm like, oh, that's where that went. You don't notice it until you start nitpicking, and then you're like, oh, there it is. That's where it went. I didn't know where it went. That's where it went. Maybe I need to get a little more physically fit. But the medical part of this, I guess I would do more of if I had additional time to, because quality food takes time. It takes preparation. It takes focus. It takes timing, incredible timing with some foods. And I believe there's a way to infuse cannabis into foods where it's so masked by things that are very similar in either savory or sweet in those categories that you don't notice them. And I suppose if I could incorporate the medical philosophy into standard food fare rather than the treat action, because I'd much rather consume it as a part of my meal than as an addendum treat to the day's calorie consumption. For crying out loud, I consume enough calories in just fountain drinks or, you know, soda pop. I don't need a lot more calories. I really don't. Unless I started running, I'll probably start doing some more physical activity with the dogs this summer, since I started doing the dog thing. Seriously working on training dogs. One at a time. Intensive training, one at a time. I'm diverging from my point in this segment. Wanted to talk about a couple of things. If you're in Massachusetts, you know that it's generally considered fairly liberal turf. It's one of the blue states. It's not a red state. It tends to be a blue state. And many things that happen in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party spring forth from Massachusetts. Right now there, according to Boston.com, Massachusetts' most powerful politicians have come out against legal marijuana. And you know why? It's the gun that gets loaded and shot after you ready up the polls to vote on legal cannabis. When you start doing this by referendum, when you put a ballot initiative up for the vote of the people. You know, you raised signatures, you gathered money, you got some political organization together, and generally the bar is fairly high because legislators hate it when citizens create law. They can't stand it. Booey for you. Go cry to somebody else. I don't want to hear about it. You're obviously not doing your job as a representative, or people wouldn't have to rise up on their own and do it by themselves. Fortunately, we've got that ability, yet in most states and in well, you can't do it at the federal level. I wish you could do referendum at the federal level. This marijuana question would have been fixed a long time ago. But Massachusetts has loaded this question up for the ballot this fall. And so says Governor Charlie Baker, Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, and Attorney General Maura Healey. We think the answer is no to the question, which is before us now, on whether marijuana should be fully legal and widely available for commercial sale. This November, Massachusetts residents will be able to vote on a ballot question that would regulate and tax the sale of marijuana for recreational purposes. The lawmakers' argument against the question follows a Few key points, citing federal studies, of course. The federal studies are always conducted by whom? The National Institute on Drug Abuse, who does what? Studies the negative impact and consequence of drug use. That's all that they do. So let's cite them. Like they're any measure of what I would call objectivity. They're not. They're not objective at all. In fact, they're the opposite of objective. First, he argued legalizing marijuana makes it more likely for young people to use the drug, which can impact brain development. Okay, a couple of things. The studies on brain development are very small. There's a connection made, but it's not concise. And in fact, there are other studies that show that those initial studies done by NIDA may be more Swiss cheesy than they appeared. Yet they're always cited. In addition, issues with labeling and THC potency, particularly for edibles, have increased in marijuana-related emergency room visits and marijuana-related traffic deaths in Colorado, they write. Oh, really? Show the stats on that. Because they're non-existent there in Colorado. While you've always got the increased opportunity, anytime you unharness a drug and make it available to the public at large, generally with warning in tow, you're going to have some increased visits to the emergency room as people experience this and learn along the way. People don't drink too much when they drink too much, generally, if you're not an alcoholic anyways. If you're an alcoholic, that doesn't matter. You can pray to the porcelain god or goddess and then get up and drink some more and then pray again. I would say that you're on a downward spiral into oblivion if you don't get yourself out of that situation, but you learn from it if you do. And incidentally, you can die from that alcohol. You can drink so much of that alcohol that it will literally kill you. It will shut down your central nervous system. You will die from heart and respiratory failure because you've suppressed your ability to do those functions with toxicity. Alcohol poisoning, they call it. Because it's really a poison. The effects you're feeling from being intoxicated are indeed that's the poisonous effect. You're not really getting a high off of it. You're being poisoned, and the effects that you're feeling and that you're getting as a drunk person are indeed poisoning effects. Cannabis isn't like that. Here in Massachusetts, we face the possibility that any new revenue would be vastly insufficient to cover the cost of ambulance rides, emergency room visits, and treatment. Let's see you do that math, because that's wholly a farce as well. The op-ed even takes on a populist message criticizing the growing corporatization of marijuana legalization away from grassroots pro-pot activists. The anti-legalized weed trio face an uphill battle in Massachusetts, which has been favorable to marijuana ballot questions. In 2008, residents voted to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana, and in 2012, voters even elected to legalize medical marijuana. Guess what? You're not going to win, you guys in Massachusetts.
You're getting the full melt.
Promotional consideration provided by NoSmell.com, pioneering the storage market for cannabis users. The NoSmell patented bag technology offers users 100% smell-proof detection from even the most sophisticated of noses. NoSmell.com, so nobody knows. When placing your order for a no-smell bag, make sure to use discount code FULLMELT and take 10% off the entire order. Learn more about no-smell technology at nosmell.com.
Young students are our future. They're eager to learn, eager to succeed, eager to make the world a better place. And they want to make it to school safely. Share the road. Take care when passing. And always leave 3 feet between you and people on bikes. Bikes are legal road vehicles. We're all drivers.
When you need legal help, you don't want to guess at who's standing next to you in court. And when it comes to a medical marijuana defense, it's even smarter to partner with a lawyer before you need one. Based in Royal Oak, David Rudoy has a proven history of not being afraid to take your case all the way to the Supreme Court and win. Find the law offices of Rudoy Law
at RudoyLaw.com.
RudoyLaw.com is a quick reference on your rights concerning Michigan medical marijuana
and up-to-date news.
That's RUDOI Law.com. Call 248-935-9074 now and talk about your legal needs, because at RadoyLaw.com, we don't just stand up for you, we stand up with you.
If you're like us, your pets aren't just animals. They're members of your family. Pet Pain CBD hemp oil drops are great for aging as well as active dogs and cats. Some people are apprehensive about hemp treatments for pets. They ask us, what are you smoking? Absolutely nothing, and neither will your pet. Like other hemp-based products for humans, the allure is all of the benefits of cannabis without any of the high. The CBD oil has shown to rejuvenate the bones, joints, brain, stomach, eyes, and heart. And the drops contain absolutely no corn, wheat, soy, artificial colors and flavors, or preservatives. Pick some up today. Visit petpain.com or ask for Pet Pain at your local pet store. Petpain.com. CBD relief for your pet.
Hey, it's Steve Green for the Sweet Leaf in Flint, because now getting safe access to medical cannabis patients in Flint, Michigan is never more welcoming. Presenting the Sweet Leaf, a brand new patient experience, bringing 12 carefully selected caregivers housed in 9 separate offices to distinctly assist you with their knowledge and reputation for excellent patient care. Classes and training coming soon in the large community room. Check it out in person, 400 South Door Highway, or call 810-259-2571. The Sweet Leaf Center in Flint, 810-259-2571. 571. It's the Full Melt Radio Show. You can catch us here Monday through Friday from 7 until 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I'm your host, Steve Green. In the news today, additionally, I wanted to talk about this Malaysian thing because I think it paints a picture on a global scale about the reactions of some local politicians about the freeing of the weed. During the National Anti-Drug Day, the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia cautioned that other countries' move to decriminalize marijuana cannot be used as a benchmark here, citing that out of 26,668 addicts in the country last year, as many as 23.9% were repeat offenders. Well, duh. That's why they call them addicts, you idiots. Although the proposal has not been officially rejected, personally, I do not agree with it, he said. His stance also was supported by the Inspector General of Police, who said Malaysia is not ready, declaring that PDRM does not support and, in fact, opposes it being decriminalized. But did you know that marijuana, its original name was cannabis, marijuana is the Mexican name for it, could potentially replace painkillers due to the 3 big reasons? And then the article goes on. But the cutaway from it is this. I mean, these people in Malaysia will take extreme measures, including killing people in public over drugs. They don't screw around there. And it's going to take a little bit while longer to get the people who are used to the economy being driven by that in their favor. It employs people to chase around the quote-unquote 200 or 26,000 some odd drug addicts in Malaysia. Did you count the people on caffeine? You guys in Malaysia smoke an awful lot of cigarettes. Tell me how many of those addicts were counted in your damn survey, you idiots. Live and learn. Malaysia is a tumultuous place. And then, I build the story, or this, the show, this episode of the program, on a particular story about the weed exchange. This is actually from Bloomberg Business at Bloomberg.com. Legal marijuana is a $5 billion business in the United States already. $5 billion. And Steve Janjic figured he'd get a piece of it with a commodity exchange. That's right, I said a commodity exchange. The Chicago Mercantile, do you know how that's different than the New York Stock Exchange? Or any of the other exchanges in New York? Because there's more than just the New York Stock Exchange. Obviously, there's, the blue chips and all those. There's other stock exchanges. But this isn't a stock exchange. It's a commodities exchange. Oh, that's what these guys are creating for pot. for a product that can't be transported across state lines. Not to worry, says Janjic. It's never easy to pioneer an industry. He's a former foreign exchange executive at Tulip Prebon LLC who's put $1 million into Americanex Corp., an electronic cannabis trading platform that handles the sales of about 100 to 150 pounds of weed a week. Now, that's not exactly blockbuster in a country with an estimated 20 million marijuana consumers. It may not be too bad, though, in the case of a young exchange for a psychoactive substance transitioning to a legitimate, or sort of legitimate anyways, considering it's illegal under federal law. Janjic and other Wall Street veterans backing Americanex take the very long view. While only 4 states in the District of Columbia have sanctioned pot for recreational use, Nevada may join them after a November vote. In 23 states, the drug is now allowed for medical purposes. Polls showing a majority of Americans believe it should be licit as beer, giving Americanex high hopes. I look at this as an early NYMEX, says Richard Schaefer, a former chairman of the New York Mercantile Exchange. I look for this to become a very substantial matching engine bringing buyers and sellers together. Schaefer, 63, is an Americanex chairman, and Janjic, 49, is chief executive officer and co-founder. Others from the financial world involved include futures trader Timothy Petrone, a member of NYMEX and the Chicago Board of Trade, former NYMEX board member David Greenberg, and James McNally, who's been a member of NYMEX, the Commodities Exchange, and the Hong Kong Futures Exchange. For the record, none is a cannabis user, which is probably neither here nor there. Even the gluten intolerant can get rich on wheat futures. But is there serious money to be made trading the flowers and leaves of the cannabis plant? Americanex isn't alone in betting that there will be someday. Soham Saha, a 26-year-old with a degree from the University of Arizona, started the Cannabis Commodities Exchange 3 months before Americanex got off the ground. CCE operates only in Colorado, which in 2012 became the first state to vote to make recreational pot legal. Americanex is in Colorado and in California, the first to okay weed for medical use. And Janjic says there are expansion plans. I'll bet there are. The hurdles are sizable. For an exchange to fully function, a commodity has to have standardized specifications and some regulatory oversight, as products from corn to metals do. So everyone can be assured of exactly what they're buying and selling, says Dale Rosenthal, who teaches finance at the University of Illinois, Chicago. There's not a clear reference price for raw marijuana either, he says. Another sticking point. Weed comes in very wide ranges of quality and potency and price. The legal stuff hasn't been around long enough for any national benchmarks. Traditional spot and futures markets for commodities like wheat or crude oil are linked to a single, widely accepted variety with a minimum quality standard. Americanex buyers aren't operating blind, Janjic says, because the exchange sends what's sold on its platform to a laboratory for evaluation and shares the results. But here's the rub. Buyers and sellers have to be in the same state. The U.S. government regulates interstate commerce, and selling or possessing marijuana are federal crimes, so then is sending it across the borders. And Americanex is an exchange for spot trades of physical purchases, not paper-only futures or options contracts. Right now, the federal law is the risk in this game, Janjic says. It is really a fun idea, though. In Colorado, purveyors were required until January of 2015 to cultivate what they sold, and most still do. The only way that I think you can really be successful is by growing your own, said the CEO of True Cannabis, which has 5 stores. If you're buying from a wholesaler, you're screwed. In Oregon and Alaska, merchants are allowed to use their own raw materials, but Washington legalized in 2014 with a law forbidding retailers from doing so. In a system like that, exchanges become more useful, says Adam Orens, the founding partner of the Marijuana Policy Group. Americanex started in July of 2014 with 20,000 seats, though it has retired about 8,000. The seats began selling for $2,500 each, and are now going for $10,000. Janjic says $7,000 are still up for grabs. Dixie Brands, Inc., a Denver-based maker of THC-infused products, bought a seat last year and has an equity stake. Americanex will help distribute its goods more efficiently, says CEO Trip Keebler. Oh, good Lord. You're starting to see some other players come into the market, which I think is a strong endorsement. For McNally, who's on the 3-member advisory board and owns a seat, being part of the brand new sector is exciting. It reminds me of when I first started, he said, recalling his days as a Hang Seng Index operations trader in Hong Kong in the 90s. It's really fun. Last year, legal weed sales rose 17% to $5.4 billion, according to a report from ArcView Market Research and New Frontier. If every state had legitimized marijuana, the sum could be $36.8 billion. California, the most populous state, might start boosting the numbers soon. Campaigns are collecting signatures for the November ballot measures, which we'll be covering all across the country as we go on with this program. California is very important, Janjic says. It's shaping up to be the largest marketplace in the world. And that's the underpinning of why we do this show here at The Full Melt. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Full Melt Show is a production of TFM Media.